so it's on the other screen. So probably I will have to face another away from the monitor. But thank you very much, Luisa. Thank you very much, Hendrik. I want to acknowledge the Journal of Public Space for this opportunity to talk today and to present this, I think, quite interesting topic. Just a few words to say that all of this started with a WhatsApp conversation with Alessandra in the end of June. And yeah, we exchanged some messages to say, like, we were a little bit puzzled, also bothered a little bit about what was happening in terms of public space, because for many years we have worked with the issue of integration of renewable energy into the public space. But then we were seeing with the new situation with the COVID-19, we were seeing that there is more pressure into the public space. And we think that we couldn't understand exactly. We had an idea what type of issues we could have into the future, but we wanted to discuss together with all of you. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And also, I think the best way to start is first of all, to say, my name is Agatino and I work at Luleå University of Technology in a group of architecture. And some of the research we do in this group deals with energy, actually a lot of it. One colleague of mine is going to talk, Björn is going to talk later on, is going to show his projects. So if I go a little bit forward, I think as an introduction, what I would like to do very briefly is just to present the baseline for people who work, for architects and planners who work with energy. So who work with the city and public space with energy. And as you can see, like in these two pictures, we can see that the demand for energy into the future is projected to increase. You can see like in the two numbers underlined in red. We can see, of course, that the contribution of renewable energies in the near future is going to increase. It's already increasing a lot. At the same time, we have still like a very strong contribution of non-renewable energy sources into this production of energy in this demand, so which we need to consider. So the future means more energy, and still reliance on non-renewable energy fuels. For a country like Sweden, the situation looks a little bit like this. We are quite good at the European scale. Lots of our energy is produced from renewable energy sources. Mostly is hydro actually, but still, as you can see, the majority of energy sources still come from non-renewable sources, nuclear fuels and fossil fuels. And of course, there is a challenge also to how to work with the transmission losses, which you see here on the top right of the image. At the same time, and I will briefly talk like a little bit more about this, there is the question of how the energy demand is going to change into the future, because as we know, public transport at the moment is questioned for the reason of physical distancing. So we don't know how the domestic transport in the future is going to evolve. And this has a big impact into the city and public space. Now, from an urban and architectural point of view, we focus on what we call like a resource urbanization nexus. This means that the way we design the city, the way we shape city, streets, public space, buildings affects energy demands. In turn, the energy demands affects climate. And of course, climate in turns with the mechanism of feedbacks will affect again cities. And here you see like three screenshots of this kind of nexus when it's related to air pollution, or whether it is related to flooding or hurricanes, or whether this is related like to wildfires. And of course, we know what is happening right now in California and what has happened a few months ago in Australia. So from an architectural point of view, I think this is important to understand, to try to urbanize this climate and energy issues, to understand it in this way. Now, from looking at this nexus and at these questions from a country like Sweden, it's not that big, it's probably not very relevant worldwide, but like many other countries in the world, we have like signed, our government has signed the Paris Agreement. And as you know, in the Paris Agreement, each country has pledged to reduce CO2 contribution. It is called national determined contribution, that each country has to do an effort to reduce CO2. In Sweden, this means two things. The government has pledged by 2045 to reach a carbon neutral country, so at the national level. At the same time, by 2040, we are supposed to have 100% of energy production from renewable energy sources. At the moment, we are at 60%, which is the highest share in Europe, but still there is a lot of work to do to support this transition. Now, there are a few challenges if we think about energy with the lens of an architect or a planner. First challenge is that of prosumers. So how do we transition from a current energy monopoly, where there are a few companies that produce energies and there are many consumers, to the issue of energy democracy, in which consumers of energies can be producers? And then also there is the issue of socio-spatial acceptance. How do we make sure that this new technology, which we are going to roll out into our cities and landscape, are going to be accepted by the citizens, by the residents? How we are going to work with this issue? That is another issue that there is a lot of work in literature, and it's a big problem. At the same time, here I have to acknowledge also some of the work of my colleague Bjorn, which I'm sure is going to show later, regarding like the picture on the right. From a theoretical point of view, and also, let's say also practical point of view, we think that to deal with these challenges, we need to rethink the idea of city around the concept of resourcefulness, which from my point of view means three things. First, thinking about a deeper social technical integration of energy, which means the whole value chain of energy, from harvesting, distribution, use, and saving. So a deep integration of this system with the city structure at the technical level, but also from a social point of view, which is not that easy. We need to think the idea of resourceful cities from also as a shift, as we were saying before, from a large scale centralized to small scale decentralized resource management. So we are thinking about that the energy in the future should be produced nearby where people live, with probably small equipments that are integrated into the built environment in our everyday life. And perhaps there will be a mix of this and a little bit a mix of bigger like solar parks or what is it, like wind farms. So it would be a mix of this, but the small scale decentralized is still like a topic which is not very well studied. And then I think central contribution from an architecture point of view is the idea of rethinking the aesthetic of cities. So how do we imagine future cities around the idea of energy aesthetics? How the design thinking process, which is the one we use in planning and architecture, can help to shape a new idea of aesthetics, where the solar panel, the PV panel, or the wind turbine is not just something like that is attached at the end of design process, but it's actually generating, it's changing the idea of imagining the space. Another like pictures, a series of our works that we do here in Luleå, some from Bjorn and some from some of our projects. How can we mobilize, basically in this project, the question is, how can we mobilize design thinking as a way to think differently about future cities and future aesthetics? So we work with ideas of co-creation, of course, society engagement, and a lot with the design thinking process. All of this work very well with few challenges before COVID-19, but now, as I was saying before with Alessandra, when we were discussing back in June, we have a new issue that is that of physical distancing and public space. So I have here a set of pictures from Sweden, from southern Italy, the place where I'm from, and like also some initial like design adaptation which is happening currently in Italy, which is one of the countries most affected by COVID-19 in the world. The main problem is that especially like in Italy, but all over the world, as a way to manage the physical distancing, lots of private activities are projecting into the public space, are projecting out. And this means that the public space, little by little, is going to be used by private business. It's not the problem about that. The problem is that how do we think about this process? How do we manage this? When the public space is privatized, also temporary, how do we, what does it mean this? And how do we manage also the question of energy, in all of this? You can see like here, there is like a few terraces that take either the whole space of the sidewalk, even project into the street, or you can see like, you can see here the case like where tables are, of course, projected into the sidewalk, and again, this corresponds into the reduction of public space. And here you see an experiment in the center of Italy. So to wrap up this introduction, there are a few questions that it's something that interests me, and I hope it can also interest some of the speakers and maybe the audience, and we could have a discussion about this. First, very important question. Are the energy or climate questions in architecture losing focus when most institutions and people are concerned with the primary issue of human health, which we took for granted before? It's not granted anymore. So how does this affect climate issues? I think you have noticed that there are not very many news about climate change anymore. Then what does it mean this for us? What does it mean? Like, what further issues poses the new situation of COVID-19 when we deal with the quest for building future solar public space? And also how the design thinking process should be adapted to this new issue of physical distancing. How do we deal with that? Especially when we use design thinking process that is participative, when we work with stakeholders, when we work with citizens, residents, and all of the society. And also, is the health crisis steering us back towards silos thinking? And this means that because we have this crisis, is it this pushing to think again the cities in like sectoral ways, or do we think that design and the transdisciplinary way of thinking about design thinking can help still to address these challenges? And finally, what is or what should be the role of architects in this post-COVID-19 resourceful cities? That's